Hey everybody, welcome to the Kickstarter preview for Giant Killer Robots Heavy Hitters. Now what I have here is a prototype copy of the game, and this is produced by a company called Weta Workshop, which has done special effects and different kinds of effects for movies like The Hobbit and also TV shows like Mythbusters. And go check out their website, you can see all the stuff that they've done. They are now attempting to kickstart a board game, and this is a Giant Killer Robot mechs versus mechs game. So let's jump in and take a look at all the components. Again, it's prototype, but it's probably going to blow you away a little bit here. And I'll explain how the gameplay is going to work, and then I'll give you my thoughts. Okay, so I've gone ahead and set up the board, and one thing that you're going to need to do is set up these buildings. So these are kind of like three pieces. You have these bases here, and then you have this really thick cardboard with these perforated edges there, and then you're going to stick that into there like that. And then you have these tops here to do the top of the building. You can see there's the two arrows there. There's the arrow there and there, and you want to make sure those line up because one of the objectives of the game is to sort of tag these different buildings and to actually eventually destroy them. And by lining these up, they'll get them to line up with the hexes in the correct way. Now, I've got here two different mechs or two different factions. So yeah, this is pretty cool. So this is one of the players will get this mech here, and you can see kind of the level of detailed and the sort of paint job that's going to come on these here. And then here we'll take a look at the blue one, like so. And this is a very different looking mech. He's got a big old gun right there. So this is very nice, and you can see here the little markers here. So there is facing is important with your main mechs, your heavy hitters, and then you have kind of your sort of arc here, and then anything that's behind them will be in flank. So that's important with the big guns there. And then each player is going to have access to these support units. So here's the blue ones here. So we've got a combat oriented support unit, a kind of recon support unit, and these can fly, so they can fly like through or over buildings. And then you have a recovery, a repair robot there. And so we'll take a look at the orange players here. And so we've got their combat mech there, like that. And then we have here the recon here. He's got this little fella here with kind of like this jetpack kind of thing. Looks really cool. And then we have their repair bot there, like that. So you won't start with these on the board. You'll have to bring them out, but each player will set up the board here like so, and it gives you, I think, 3 different setups, but there's nothing stopping you from kind of playing around with these. The building height isn't necessarily important, at least for right now. And then you're going to basically set up on opposite ends of the battlefield here, and then you're going to go. And so all of the action here is going to be driven by card play. And so you're going to have a little bit of deck building. Don't let that scare you, because it's not too heavy-handed. It's actually very interesting. And then the object of the game is to tag 4 buildings, to be the first one to tag 4 buildings. And when you do that, you're actually going to destroy the building, which will change up the battlefield, or to actually destroy your opponent's mech there. So let's take a look at the decks. So the first thing to know is you are going to have 3 cards for your different support bots. So here we have our Recon, RCN. You can see it's the flying guy, he's scoot and shoot. And then we have here our combat guy, hell on wheels. There's different stats, which we'll talk about. And then the repair bot. Each player is going to set those aside, and those will just let you know how these bots operate. And then you're going to have kind of your main deck, and this deck represents your entire heavy hitter. And so there's a couple things to note. Now these are just a straight 25 cards out of the box that I've got here, but the main game is going to come with a bunch of extra cards that you can actually do to build your deck. And so it's pretty interesting how they have it. So they have the M here. So this is a maneuver card. And then we have here a primary weapon. So when you go to do the deck building, you'll find one of the primary weapons. So the primary weapon in this case will be Thunderstrike missiles. But there's going to be other primary weapons available. So you pull out all the primary Thunderstrike missiles, and then you add in whatever the case may be there. There's also going to be deploy cards. You want plenty of these. These are actually how you get your support units onto the board. You can see it costs you 2 energy and so on. I'll talk about how energy works in a minute. And then here, like this guy's got some orbital strikes. And you also have secondary weapons here. So you'll take out a certain amount of the secondary weapons and swap in different weapons. And you'll kind of just do this beforehand. But I don't think you're going to spend a ton of time in deck building. But you know, there is the opportunity there to kind of mix up the gameplay. And like, for example, here we have a reaction card that you can say says play after rolling to attack. And then you would do it, and you have to spend an energy to do that. So you're going to make up your decks there, and then each player is going to draw 6 cards off the top of your deck, and that's going to be what you want. You can take a mulligan, and it does give you kind of a tip here. So like if you had a bunch of the same, like I've got too many deploy cards, I don't need that many. You shuffle everything back in, and then you draw 6 more. But you do want at least a couple of deploys out, because these support units are certainly helpful during the game. Now as you play the game, you're going to play cards and you'll usually discard them, but as you take damage, and sometimes there will be one-time effects, like this one here is an orbital strike, you're just going to actually put these in the damage pile there, and so as you take hits and take damage, you're going to start to deplete your main deck here. When you run out of the deck, you'll shuffle your discard back in and keep going like that. So this is also your hit points as well as sort of the capabilities. And you think of it, it's like your unit taking damage. You might, blow up the weapons, so your weapons aren't quite as operational and they're in the damage deck now. Now you're randomly going to give one player the Glory Hound token. This is sort of like start player, and this will trade hands possibly at the end of the round, but this is going to kind of give you your initiative there. And then you're going to walk through these phases. You're going to deploy, move, combat, tag, and then a little bit of reset. And since this is a prototype, I just want to kind of give you a nice quick look through the rulebook, because it is a very fully fledged out rulebook, and it's already kind of got some nice layout and stuff. A lot of times these prototypes just give you a PDF, that's all text, but they've already gone a long ways here to setting out the illustrations, breaking up all the different rules in a way that's easy to digest, and giving you good examples and different caveats and things that you might do. It tells you how to build the deck there, and so on, and different ways to set up. So starting with the Glory Hound player, he's going to be able to deploy, and then the other player will be able to deploy. Now normally you want to have a deploy unit card here, and you can see a couple things about it. When you play this, it's going to cost you 2 energy, and you can do it within a range of 1 to 2 from your mech. You can, if you don't have a deploy support unit card, you can spend 4 energy to do it without the card, but you certainly don't want to spend 4 energy doing that, because let's talk about energy. Now each player is going to start off here with the +5 energy, and you have this nice kind of indented token there to gauge that. So let's say we deployed a unit for 2, boom boom, go down to 2, and then we know we do some other stuff, we're going to use more energy. Now you can spend energy below 0, but every time you do that, you're going to have to discard a card here as damage. So you're kind of damaging yourself, maybe to get an advantage. So there's some tricky stuff that you can do with that for sure. Now at the end of each round, you're going to power back up here to full 5 energy. But you can see, if I spent 4 energy doing deployment, that gives me 1 energy to, do anything on my turn. And you're going to need energy to move your heavy hitter. You're going to need energy to activate different weapons and so on. And that is going to kind of change. There's sort of an arc to the game. You kind of start off a little bit slow. You get some units out. You kind of, build up for maybe a big attack, and then you can spend more energy on future turns and maybe push the red line a little bit. Now the other piece of information on this deploy card, you spend the 2 energy, you can do it within 1 to 2 spaces here. So here we've got the orange player, so I go 1, 2, and I could stick him out there. And facing is not really important with these. These have kind of a 360 degree firing arc there. So you're going to put them out somewhat close to you, but it might behoove you to actually move up on one turn and then deploy, in a more advantageous spot or something behind a building, or so you can kind of snake around and get behind your opponent. So next you're going to go to the movement phase. Now whoever has the Glory Hound token or the initiative token is going to move their heavy hitter first, and you can spend 1 energy to move 1 space. So if I wanted to spend 2 energy, I can move 2 spaces, and then at any point there, once you figure out where you're going to move to, you can orient the facing of your mech however you want. And if you didn't want to move, for example, let's say I wanted to stay here, I could, if I wanted for no energy, just reorient my mech in any direction I want. The direction of your facing of your heavy hitter here is important. Now once everybody has taken their turn, so maybe the blue guy moves up here, and as everybody's moved their heavy hitter, then you're going to walk down the order here. So you're always going to move then combat units, again starting with the player with the Glory Hound token. And so I'll move, let's say, the combat unit, and then if Billy had one out, then he would move his out, and then we'd move repair units in a turn order, and then recon units in turn order. And their movement here is right here, so they can move up to 2 spaces, and the recon units here can actually fly. All the recon units fly, and so they can move through buildings and unfriendly units. You can move through your own units, but you can't obviously land in the same spot as them. So these recon units can get behind stuff and get around some different corners a little bit easier. And one thing you want to keep in mind with movement is being able to spot possibly your enemy heavy hitter with one of your support units, because they will access sort of a vicarious line of sight. Maybe this guy's back over here, but he's got some weapon that can hit him as long as somebody else can spot it. So after everybody's moved, then we're going to go into the combat phase. And the combat phase is very interesting. It's a little bit like a programmed movement kind of thing. So let's just take some examples we've got here, and let's say we have, who do we have out here? Let's say we have the combat unit for us out. And so you're going to take, and this will be on the there, but you're going to say, okay, I've got some energy here. There's going to cost a certain amount of energy, and so maybe I'll do these two, and then I will put them face down at the table, so both players will kind of simultaneously decide that. And then you'll also just add to that sort of pile any of your support units that are out. And I should note that it does come with these little widgets here that you actually will just kind of clip on and slide on nice and easy, and that keeps track of the hit points of that unit, and you can just kind of throw it out, so you can move this card around without losing, you know, how many hit points it had. So we're going to put those out, and then everybody's going to reveal their cards, and then you're going to organize them in speed order. So you can see this number here at the top. So this is 175 there, and then we have 275, and so on. So then we're going to operate in speed order. At this point, the initiative no longer matters, and we're just going to say, okay, I've got 175, that's my lowest, but maybe your guy here is 125, so he's going to act, he's going to do his thing, then we'll go back to me, and then we'll go just in the order of the speed. Now, combat's pretty straightforward here. Each player is going to have one of these little player aid cards. One side shows you the turn sequence, and then the other side is going to show you the basic information that you need to know about the combat. So one thing to know about the combat is there's different colored dice. Now each player is going to get 2 of these black attack dice, so blue will get 2 and orange will get 2, and then each player is going to get a bunch of defense dice in their color. So you're going to get the dice of your color as well. Now if you're going to attack, you have to know who you're attacking with. Now if you're attacking with your heavy hitter, you want to get a 5+. If you're attacking with one of your support units, you need a 7+. So you're going to roll your 2 dice there. And let's say we're attacking with either one, doesn't matter in this case. We're attacking with the heavy hitter, we're able to beat 5+, and so the attack would then hit. Now a couple things to know about the attack. We're doing this paint gun here. First thing to note here is the energy cost, and when you flip those cards up, you're going to spend all of that energy. Now it's possible as we work down through the different speeds that some kind of effect or something might actually cancel that weapon from going off. You're still going to have paid that energy to have spun it up, basically. And then you're also going to have the range, and there might be also some different special effects, like this one will actually auto tag and give you a sponsor for that, which I'll explain. But it's also got the range there and the damage. So the damage here is 2 in this case, and they go all the way up to 8 damage. So if I was doing 2 damage to the blue player, they're going to take then 2 of their defense dice. So you take 1 die for each damage. If it had done 4 damage, I would take 4 defense dice. We're going to roll these, and we'll see what we're going to get. And you can see down here, in the case of the heavy hitter, a 5+ will evade that or defend that. So that will remove 1 damage, and then 3 damage will go through. Now, if you were rolling for defense on one of your support units there, you would need a 6+, so much harder to defend. And there's various different things that will affect that. So the concept of full cover and partial cover, and also being flanked in terms of determining when you even get hit. So let's talk a little bit about that. So here, let's take an example and say blue is trying to attack this heavy hitter. Now what you're going to do is you're going to count the shortest path. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the shortest path is here, 3 hexes, and because that is blocked, he's in full cover. In case you don't have line of sight, but if he was spotted here by another unit, so this one here, then you could use, sometimes there's different missiles that are sort of like, I guess you call them like heat-seeking missiles, where basically he tosses up a radar and a point to him, and so he has the fix on him so the missile can go around. But it'll say on the card if you're allowed to do that. Now let's say he was actually here, like so. And the shortest path is 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3. Now either of these is the shortest path, but because one of them goes through terrain or blocking obstacle there, then we're actually going to by a roll by -1, so it's a little bit harder to hit them. Now if he was being flanked, which this guy currently is, then you're actually going to add 1 because it's in its rear arc. So you can see here again, these mechs have to be facing, the targets have to be in one of these 3 directions. They can see as far as they want. The weapon card itself will give you the full range in terms of the number of hexes you can get to, but that's going to be their front flank there. Now if they're behind them, that you're going to get that flanking bonus from their kind of their rear arc there. You're going to walk through all of the attack cards, going again by the speed there, and then doing whatever the attacks are. You're going to go into the tagging phase, so let's just zoom out slightly here, and you're going to take a look at and see what sort of side of the building that you're on, and let's just move him down here for fun, and each player is going to be able to tag that building, and so each player has these colored markers like so. So you've got orange and blue there. So orange is going to be able to tag this one here because they're on this edge of it. Blue will tag this one here, and then orange will be able to tag again this one here because they can tag it with their support bot. And so one of the objects of the game, in addition to destroying your opponent, is to basically tag and destroy 4 of these buildings. So as soon as you have 4 tags of your color, that's actually going to destroy that building, and you just pop the top off of this here and just leave that there, and you can take all the markers out except for one to show that you basically sort of have like 1 victory point. Now you still, this will still block movement, but it doesn't block line of sight anymore, and so the battlefield will sort of change up just a little bit. So the first player to get 4 of those will win. You can actually replace somebody else's tag. So let's say later on blue moved here and orange was there. They could take that out and put one of theirs in there. And there's also different effects that will allow you to do tags, like you saw that one sort of paint gun. For each building that you tag, you will be able to draw one of these sponsorship cards. And these are just all kinds of crazy, wacky effects that you're going to have. Some of these are sort of like a counter spell. These are hacks that you can do, counter hacks, and so on. These will buff up your attacks or cancel attacks and things like that. And so you can have at most up to 5 of these. You'll discard down to 5 at the end of the round if you have more than that. The other thing I should have mentioned, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is when you take damage, you don't actually have to discard cards just off the top of your deck. You can take cards out of your hand. Because at the end of the turn, you're going to draw back up to 6 cards. And so sometimes you're like, I have 3 paint guns. Why do I want that? So maybe will get rid of some of those extras. They'll come back. Yeah, you just go back and forth. The player who did the most tags will get the start player marker, the initiative marker. Now if there's a tie, then it's going to pass. So if the 2 of us had tied up, then I will give it to my opponent. So tie goes to the person that doesn't have it. But that's the game. Okay, so that is Giant Killer Robots Heavy Hitters. You can see that they're very, very far along in terms of production. And one thing I wanted to show you was this prototype even here came with a little comic book. It kind of gives you a little bit of the background. It has these different reporters sort of in the scene as the robots are doing damage to each other. It's got some little advertisements and stuff like that. And it comes with some other pieces of art and everything. So obviously the components are outstanding and ridiculous. And if you want a mech combat kind of game, this is kind of the thing that you want. These big mechs, you can probably paint these little support mechs there if you wish. Now the game is supposed to come with 4 different factions. So I just showed you the 2 that I had in this box. So there's going to be some mix and matching there, and there's no reason you couldn't play this 4-player and try to play that way. So in terms of the game, it's very interesting because you have this sort of duality or that sort of decision to make. Do I spend a lot of my energy trying to go after an attack, or do I try to be kind of evasive and go through and kind of like tag buildings? Or do I kind of like follow up? Let's say you've tagged a bunch of these buildings. I'm like, oh, you're starting to build those up to wreck those and get those points that way. Well, I can follow those up and change those with some of my support units. So there's a really interesting back and forth between those two styles of play. And then once you start to, you start to take some damage and stuff, you got to be really conservative in a way about how you play the cards, and especially how you play the energy, because a lot of times you really want to be tempted, I mean, like from turn one basically, to spend that extra energy and then go bleed out that red line a little bit, and then just try to get that little bit of an advantage, but you're again, you're damaging yourself, so it's it's very, very risky. So they all did mention, I haven't seen in this particular copy, but they're going to have like cards for different pilots that you can use, so you can kind of mix up your mech powers a little bit more. And then there's a couple other things they mentioned in the notes here that they're going to have in the game, different achievement upgrades and different stuff like that. So doing different things in the game, is going to cause you to get extra bonuses or special abilities and powers. So what I showed you is like really just kind of the core mechanics of the game. You build your deck a little bit, you deploy your mechs, you got your support units, and you try to kind of maneuver around the buildings and tag buildings and blow each other up. But I think that's actually a really good thing, because you could see how this sort of world that they've set up here is going to be very sort of versatile, and be able to have like modules kind of plugged into it left and right. I mean, it's really open for expansion. I've only seen the two mechs here, and we've played it 3 times now, and I definitely would have to play at least 3 more, if not more than that. Just with the basic stuff I have. I haven't even looked at the deck building, because we just have kind of like, I guess, the standard like recommended 25 cards that you can do. And so even with that, there's still good chunky decision making in terms of, when do I send out my orbital strike and when do I do that? And you can have really big turns, because you can do like 8 damage and you're rolling like 8 defense dice, and you're like, oh, and you can just get pummeled for 6 damage, or you can block a whole bunch of it. And so it has those really kind of dramatic moments that really kind of fit in this world. Is kind of, if you think of it as like kind of like a Hunger Games or a Running Man kind of thing, but with giant mechs instead of people. And so that's very, very interesting to see this kind of approach, sort of a game show version of MechWarrior, which is a really fun atmosphere to have. The other thing I wanted to I don't know if I showed you enough, but I think in addition to obviously the buildings, which are really neat, and the mechs, I mean, the artwork on the cards and stuff is really cool. And I like kind of the design of this, so you can quickly see, oh, that's a secondary weapon, that's a primary weapon. So at a glance, you can see what kind of card you're dealing with, and then the artwork and stuff and everything is really nice as well. So I definitely recommend folks check out the Kickstarter. I'll have a link there at the bottom of the video, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see this, because you can see this sort of level of production we haven't really seen in terms of these mechs. It's like these, what you're going to get out of the box. And so I think the interesting thing for me is this is a big, almost like a movie studio kind of idea, and they're coming out with board games, and they've got a real passion for it, but they're bringing kind of that extra production know-how that's sort of outside the box of what normal board game publishing can do. And you can see definitely that they've really kind of honed in on the design and really focused in on getting that core working. And so I think really, I'm very excited to see what else is going to come. What are the other 2 factions going to be looking like? How will, some of the different pilot abilities and all that stuff. Like I said, it's that sole core of it. It's so sound and fun that I think it could really go a long way. So definitely take a look at Giant Killer Robots Heavy Hitters. Thanks.